and in fact it is our Bible, it is our Quran. It is something that we must have every year to be able to bring together all the young people of the Gambia, converge and discuss national issues. And it's been a lot easier back then because we used to have it at the National Assembly. Then it was not very expensive. We can have the National Assembly chambers and be able to conduct the sit-ins there, and that was a big favor for the National Youth Parliament. We took pride in that. But having to transition from having it at the National Assembly to now having it at the conference center set a bigger challenge for us, because then it's now more expensive. We need to be able to resource mobilize to be able to put together the funds to accommodate ourselves at the OIC, and that's really, really very expensive.
But what's the need to transition into the conference center?
That is the list of our desires. Usually we've heard it at the National Assembly. Last year, when we wanted to have it at the National Assembly, we were made to understand that there were renovations going on in the National Assembly. And as such, we've not been able to have it there. And the same thing happens this year. As we speak, we've sent several delegations. We've ourselves went to the National Assembly on several occasions to see what is the possibility for us to be able to have our sit-ins at the National Assembly. But again, we've been made to understand that there are renovations going on there. So that has posed a serious challenge for us. And we're hoping that the leadership and the National Assembly will come to our aid, and subsequently next year we will not have to struggle so much to have the sit-ins at the OIC. We'll be able to have it back in the National Assembly. But in as much as the preparations are concerned, we've been able to resource mobilize, we've been able to put together the little things that we have with support from our partners. And at this juncture, you'll allow me to say a big thanks to the Ministry of Youth and Sport. They've always been there. But most importantly, to our partners, a big thanks to UNDP Gambia. They've always supported us every year, as well as UNFPA, the Gambia. They've always also been there to support us. But also, most importantly, the European Union, because they've responded to our calls last year. They responded to our calls this year, and that has been the reason this sittings is possible. And that is the reason we are here, to be able to discuss the possibilities of what are the outcomes will be.
Okay, so tell us about the upcoming sit-ins. What are we going to expect? What are the key things, like the pillars that you're going to discuss? Because we know, obviously, you will talk about issues affecting youth. What are the things that we would expect to hear from the sit-ins?
Interesting. So usually when we have the National Youth Parliamentary sit-ins, we mostly talk about most pertinent issues affecting young people. That ranges from youth employment. It also spread through to education, to job creation, to migration, and many other things that surrounds young people. And always it has been the representative of the young people, who are the National Youth Parliamentarians, that will do the deliberation. This year we're expecting to have it done differently. And that is to see to it that we do not just have the youth parliamentarians to discuss, because the ecosystem of young people in the Gambia are more than the National Youth Parliamentarians. In as much as they represent the young people, they might not embody the full voices of the young people. So we are looking to have, as part of the annual sit-ins this year, we are looking to have what we call the National Youth Assembly. So the National Youth Assembly is a variation. Strategically, we only have the National Youth Parliamentarians come in and discuss during the sit-ins. This time around, on the third day of the sit-in, it's a general sitting that is open to every young person, and their voices are going to be heard. So it is us now having a direct interface with all the young people of the Gambia to discuss on the outcomes of the sit-ins. Now, the pillars, like you asked, that we want to talk about this year mainly is going to be on elections, because election is a critical issue for us this year. And young people constitute over 65% of the population, but also young people constitute a greater percentage of the voting population in the Gambia. So therefore, the election is a consequential election, but also the involvement of young people is in no measure something that is small. So therefore, it's critical for us to discuss that this year. Other things that we want to continue to discuss is around education. We've seen the released results from grade 12. They've been massively, really very bad. What are the positions of young people? Because these are the things that directly affect our life. But also when we talk about other issues such as job creation, most of the times people talk about job creations, drug abuse, irregular migration, and other things, and they isolate them from governance. For us, we think that is central to whatever discussion that needs to happen, because all these things are issues that correlate directly with governance. So therefore, these are things that we're looking forward to discuss in our sit-ins this year.
That's right. You made mention something very important, that is elections. Like you said, we make majority of the electorate, but yet when it comes to decision-making positions, we are lagging behind. Usually youths are used to mobilize campaigns, and the list goes on. What are your priorities when it comes to election? How are you thinking of getting the youths involved in election and decision makings? Right.
So the National Youth Parliamentarians, or the National Youth Parliament generally, prides on youth participation, because that is the basis for our existence. We exist to empower young people. We exist to ensure that we serve as a voice for young people. We exist to ensure that we are a relation between duty bearers and the young people, and therefore it is important anything that affects the young people is a priority to us. Now, this year, as we move towards election, let me be very clear. We have a lot of youth organizations in the Gambia that are doing amazingly well. But a lot of the things that we're doing are fragmented. And because they're fragmented, this is why we've not really been taken seriously by other generations. In this case, the generation that controls leadership in the Gambia.
That's right.
Young people continue to be seen as people that need to follow. And young people continue to be people that need to be consulted, that need to just participate. But are they fully represented? That becomes a question that we now want to answer. And in answering to that question, what we want to do is to have what we call a National Youth Manifesto. Now, what the National Youth Manifesto is going to do, first, how do we ensure we form a National Youth Manifesto? We have a National Youth Manifesto, but also have the credibility to be able to call it a National Youth Manifesto, because you cannot sit in a fancy office somewhere in Westfield and work on a document and say that is the National Youth Manifesto.
Yeah.
So what we've started...
It has to be inclusive.
Exactly. So what we've started doing since the 17th of August is to ensure that our youth parliamentarian in their various constituency will do constituency consultation. So they meet young people in their various constituency, discuss with them on what their priorities are for the elections. What are they looking forward to? What do they want to see? The people that are selling agendas for them to be voted for as president, what do we want to see reflect in their manifestos? What do we want to see to be their agendas? So that consultation is ongoing. So once they finish the constituency consultation, they will meet at a region. In order for us to minimize the number of documents we are going to receive, we ensure that they have a regional sitting. So the regional sitting is where they bring together now all the constituency consultation that they've conducted in their various constituencies and merge it to have a regional outcome document. Now, this regional outcome document, on the arrival day, that is on the 2nd of September, when the young people or the representative of the young people arrive for the sittings, we are going to consolidate this document into one draft. And that draft is going to be presented at the sittings on the day we are going to have the National Youth Assembly. It will be presented before all the young people. And then the young people will now have their input in this document. Now, then it will be validated, and that becomes the National Youth Manifesto. Now, the things that we want to have in it, and how we want to ensure that it is legitimate enough, is to ensure that all political party leaders and presidential aspirants are invited, and each one of them is going to receive a copy of what the young people are asking from them. So that way we are able to hold leadership accountable. That way we are able to see, if for instance the National Youth Manifesto say we want to ensure that 20 or 10% or 15% of members of the National Assembly should be made of young people. 5%, 10% or 15% of the National Assembly should be made of women. 5% should be made of persons with disability. If these are the things that we are calling for, and we are sharing this with the political party or the presidential aspirants, you want the young people to vote for you, the young people must see you selling these agendas. And you must have commitments towards selling these agendas before the young people.
It's a very good idea. It's a very good idea. And the fact that is inclusive, you're going out, you're not just sitting as youth parliaments to make the draft, but you're including the youths at various regions. But what happens if the political parties or the presidential aspirants do not consider all these points that you made mention when they take into office? What happens? How are you going to take that into account?
So that now becomes an advocacy point. You see, one thing is very important in the Gambia. we most of the time talk about transparency and accountability, but we hardly hold people to account.
That's right.
And that is why duty bearers can get away with everything that they do.
Absolutely.
Because they know they can do it and nothing comes out of it.
That's right.
Yes, the National Youth Parliament do not have the mandate to make and unmake laws, but we are a very powerful force, and young people in the Gambia are a very powerful force.
Yeah.
For instance, if every president wants to win election, if all the young people choose to not vote for you, you will not be president. In the Gambia, if we want to, we can have a youth president. This is possible because young people constitute the majority of the population. So therefore, you cannot toy with the aspirations of the young people. And that is what we want to make the young people realize. Power is in their hands. They're responsible. They can be the one to choose the people that they believe are going to respond to their calls, that are respond to their needs. So for instance, you now have a president who, for instance, says they were going to do this, and that is the reason or the basis for which we voted for them, and they don't do it. We have an opportunity to be able to correct that when we move forward. But also we should be able to use other channels through which we can advocate to ensure that our duty bearers begin to respect the commitments they take when they were campaigning.
You just mentioned something very important. We are the largest electorates, to say the youths, right? But do you think the youths are ready to take up leadership roles? And if they are ready, what do you think is a major setback for them?
Right. I think the Gambia has gotten to the point, and young people of the Gambia has gotten to the point that everyone needs to recognize that they are ready to take leadership. The past 24 months in the Gambia have witnessed a period when young people have had the longest of confrontation with duty bearers. The way you see young people now go into the streets, the way you see young people engage on social media talking about politics.
That's right.
All of these things are testaments to show that young people are no longer sitting comfortable or idly in their communities hoping for others to take decisions on their behalf. They want to take decisions themselves. And that is a testament anyhow everywhere you see it. But also, what are our setbacks? There are a series of challenges that we are confronted with. Elections in the Gambia is expensive. I know elections everywhere is expensive, but in the Gambia it's a lot more expensive than you understand.
It is.
And it has taken it is taking steps back. When we got to the point that we thought people are going to make, or elections are going to be more accessible, we have a National Assembly that came and made it, in fact, a lot more not accessible. Because now, in order for you to run for a parliamentary position at the National Assembly, you must have $150,000 that is lying somewhere that you need to take and hand it over to the IEC and say, this is my deposit. If you don't have that, you're not going to run for election, because that is your deposit. You need to deposit that first before you can run. If you want to run for presidency, you need to deposit $1 million here and say, this is here. That is different from the other $2 million you're going to use for the registration of your political party. So that is a big setback for young people in the Gambia.
It is.
Because people like me or people like others can say, well, I have 150,000, but if I put it at the, if I give it to the IEC and contest, but I'm not able to get 40% of the vote, I will not get that 150,000 back. How about I use that open a business for myself? So these are the competing challenges that young people are faced with. So we definitely call on duty bearers to reconsider how expensive the elections are in the Gambia.
What needs to change for the youth to have better inclusion, be included in decision making? What exactly needs to change in the system?
I think most importantly, duty bearers should begin to see young people as not just mere participants. They need to see them as co-creators. They need to see them as a potential force that can change the dynamics in this country. Young people all around the world are the ones responsible and driving the economies of their country. And the Gambia is no exception. We've seen a lot of young people into tech. We've seen a lot of young people now getting in governance. We've seen a lot of people, or a lot of young people in agriculture. Now, because these are the people and these are the pillars that hold our economic together, and young people are heavily invested in this, duty bearers and government should begin to take young people more seriously. And that will begin when young people themselves begin to speak in one voice, so that we do not speak in different organizations, we do not speak in different factions, we do not speak in small constituencies. We come together and start speaking as a one big constituency that cannot be ignored. And I think those are the ways we can make some changes.
When you were talking about the pillars that you were going to discuss at this year's sittings, you did mention about education and how bad this year's WASP results were. We had the Minister of Basic and Secondary Education here, and during this morning when I happened to be on sit that day, and we talked about the results and how bad they were. For her, there's been a major improvement.
Right.
Compared to 2016 till date.
Right.
And she did attribute the poor maths result to lack of teachers, lack
right.
of math teachers.
Right.
How do you assess these things that she's saying about the lack of math teachers in schools? Because you don't expect a student to bring proper results or have high marks in maths when you don't have adequate math teachers in the schools.
Right.
How do you assess all this?
So for me, the minister has the statistics. So if she speaks about statistics, that's fine. But from where I sit, from an average Gambian that looks at the system, that considers the system, that for instance has been in the field for a period of time, when you talk to me and tell me the reasons for bad scores is because we have inadequate teachers, I wonder what the problem is. The Gambia has more educational facilities today than it has before. There was only the Gambia College back then in the Gambia. That was the only institution that was training teachers.
That's right.
Now we just do not have the Gambia College. We have many other colleges that are training people. We have the University of the Gambia, and it is graduating people today more than ever. Now, but we also have teachers that are trained, that are sitting down and are not employed. So how can then a minister attribute to the low performance of students as a result of lack of teachers? But if that is the case as well, and it is identified that it is because there are not enough maths teachers in the system, does the ministry need to sit and ask themselves, maybe why are we not getting maths teachers? Are there development opportunities that are made available for these young people that are graduating from the universities to see teaching so lucrative that they want to take it? Are there benefits that are made available so that a young person like me who graduates from the University of the Gambia is interested in going to Sare Bojo to sit and become an English or a mathematics teacher? These are the questions that we need to ask ourselves as duty bearers, and these are the things and corrections that we need to do in order for us to be able to help our students, because the facilities are more available today than they were 10 years ago.
Right.
So if the results are getting worse and worse and worse by the day, then there is a fundamental question as duty bearers we should ask ourselves.
Right. I don't know what cordial relationships you have with the Children's National Assembly, because they were here on the Youth Dialogue 2 episodes behind it. Also talked about education, the structures, and the need to have like sign language incorporated into the school system. What are your point of advocacies? Are they close to what they were advocating for during their sit-ins?
So the Children's National Assembly is a strategic institution, and they work with the National Youth Parliament very, very closely.
Awesome.
I mean, every engagement that we have, the Children's National Assembly are invited and represented. But also not just that, a good number of the young people from the Children's National Assembly forms part of the National Youth Parliament. As I speak to you, the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker of the National Youth Parliament were from the Children's National Youth Parliament.
Awesome.
So there is a beautiful relationship between us, and we envision to ensure that every person that comes to the Children's National Assembly eventually becomes a member of the National Youth Parliament.
Awesome.
And the advocacy point with regards to including sign language and making the structures better in schools,
for persons with disabilities.
It cannot be better said than they put it. I watched the episode, and that is exactly what I am equally saying. We must ensure that our schools are accessible. Because when policies are made and they read that education or basic education should be accessible by each and everyone, therefore the structures must also indicate that availability of access. You cannot have a story building that do not have ramps, and you expect a student on wheelchairs to be able to access those classrooms. You cannot have a library that is on an elevated ground and have young people with disability that should access those libraries to read. So therefore, we must ensure what our policies are saying is what we reflect in the constructions and the architectures that we have in our schools.
Right. You made mention that we have so many youth organizations in the country, but they're a bit fragmented. And that is where you as the National Youth Parliament comes in place. Are you doing anything with regards to bringing all youth organizations under one umbrella to have the same views, the same aspirations, and the same working projects? So
we have a lot of organizations that are operating on different issues. we have some youth organizations that are focused on migration. We have some youth organizations that are focused on environment. We have some youth organizations that are focused on climate. And the National Youth Parliament is an intersection of all this. We're not expert in every aspect, but we have a wide range of participants that have different expertise. And that is where we are very strategic. And over the years, what we've tried to do is to see how do we establish this synergy between all youth organizations to work together so that we can sound like a bigger constituents than when we speak separately. The efforts are on the way. It's not just the National Youth Parliament. There are also different youth organizations like Activist Gambia, for instance, and many, Gala, for instance, and many other organizations that are working together to ensure we start speaking as one constituents, we start speaking as one people, because what I am advocating for and what the National Youth Parliament is advocating for is more or less the same thing that Activista is advocating for. It's more or less the same thing that Basek Got Talent is advocating for. So we all speaking the same thing, but on different platforms, and we urge all these youth organizations, and that is why all of them are invited to the sit-ins, and by extension I want to use this opportunity as well to invite them to ensure that they're all present while we validate and form a national youth manifesto that speaks to the aspirations and the needs of young people, so that duty bearers will no longer want to just look at us as a small group and want to ignore that.
That's right. So as the National Youth Parliament, and you're the clerk, who holds the National Youth Parliament accountable?
So the National Youth, so here are the structures of the National Youth Parliament. The NYP is established in the form, initially it used to be regional parliaments. We used to have regional speakers, regional deputy speakers, but then in around 2018, 2020, 2021, the National Youth Parliament thought to have a transformation. That is what they call the reformation agenda. The purposes of the reformation agenda was to ensure that there is coordination in the work that we do, but also to ensure that we are accountable to the people that we serve. So then we chose to mirror the National Assembly of the Gambia. So today the National Youth Parliament is a reflection of the National Assembly of the Gambia. We have young people that are elected by the other young people within their constituencies. And these young people form the House. But we have a secretariat, the secretariat that is where I serve, that is the machinery that is responsible for programming and administration of the National Youth Parliament. So the House, the people that are elected, that are the representative of the young people, hold accountable the secretariat. We do not do anything without the approval of the House, without the approval, for instance, of the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker, who are representing the House in the Secretariat, who are the ones that oversee the functions of the work of the programs, that is the Secretariat. But also, them young people that are elected into the Parliament are also held accountable by the other young people who voted them in, because after every 3 years, youth parliamentarians go back to elections. And if you've not done what you've promised your people, and if you've not represented them well, they can call you out. They can vote you out and vote someone else in. So back to elections, just having a sit-ins, how many days is the sit-ins lasting this year? So the proper sitting lasts for 4 days. The whole sit-ins, though, last for almost a month, because it has started since the very beginning of August. That is when we started the consultations, and the constituency consultation started on the 17th, and that is going to be a continuous process until we are able to have the sit-ins. So the sit-in ends after the 5th of September. After the 5th of September. So let's talk about security. A lot of things have been happening in the previous month, and it's still happening. We are witnessing homicide, murder cases, and a lot of it involves the youth. When you talk about the security of the country, how involved do you think the youths can be to avoid all of this that are happening? Sometimes people will attribute all these murders or homicides to drug abuse, substance abuse. What is the National Youth Parliament doing when it comes to sensitizing the youths about drugs and all these homicides we've been hearing about? So young people are central to security, and most often a lot of people are going to say the police need to do this, the government need to do that, and every other person need to do A, B, and Z. But interestingly, we also have a responsibility as to what's happening, because in no country can you have the police everywhere. This is not me holding brief for the police or holding brief for the government. But also it's important as young people, we start to reorient ourselves. Security of this nation is everybody's responsibility, including the very people that are committing the crimes. So therefore, it's a responsibility, and the National Youth Parliament is always calling on young people to ensure that we behave and conduct ourselves responsibly. We can't as well weed out every other person to say there will be no crime, there will be no insecurity somehow. The government has a lot of responsibility. And I think the responsibilities they have is to ensure that the facilities and the jobs are made available. So many times people are able to idly sit in dungeons and engage in issues that will eventually lead to violence because they do not have somewhere to engage themselves meaningfully and responsibly. So what government can do is to create the jobs, to create the avenues. What the security forces as well can do is to ensure that they provide the protections and they provide the guidance. But also, most importantly, the young people must recognize themselves as agents that can either preach peace or constitute and contribute to insecurities, and that is not what we want. But also, parents have responsibilities, because most of these crimes that you hear about, they occur in our houses. They occur right under our noses. So it is important that parents talk to their young people and educate them to be contributors to peace and not contributors to violence.
We have a lot of young people that would say, if we try to talk to them about economics of the country, the security aspect of the country, everything, they will tell you, man dumade duga si politics, man kutog rek bana. Do you think you should be more involved into? It doesn't mean you have to belong to a political party to be able to create change. What would you say to youths that have that perspective, that if you don't belong to a political party, you don't have a voice?
So it's a big problem. You see, when I started, I talked to you about the fact that most of these things that people look at isolatively, they are governance issues. When you talk about drug abuse, it's governance issues. When you talk about migration, it's governance issue. When you talk about lack of employment, it's governance issue. All of these things are governance issues. So and governance is provided for by the people that we elect in power. Is steered by an administration, by a government. It's steered by a national assembly, it's steered by a local government. So it is important that young people begin to see that these choices that they make and say they're not interested in politics are in fact the very choices that are affecting them, are in fact the very choices that lead to a lot of substance abuses. So we need to start to look at all of the problems that we have as a constituency, as a young people. We need to start looking at them all and understand that they are governance issues. So therefore, we must be heavily involved in governance. We must be heavily involved in politics in order for us to be able to address the issues. For me, being partisan is fine, but always there is a thin line where young people need to recognize being partisan and being very selfish. Sometimes it's important to be really very selfish to guard the constituencies of young people, to guard the interests of young people. Because I can support party A, but when the line crosses where I do not want it to cross for young people, I want to sit on the fence with the young people and not cross because my party crosses the line.
That's right. So what are some of the problems that are facing young people in the Gambia that policymakers are not taking seriously enough?
I think one of the things that investment in young people. I mean, for me, that's the bottom line. How much are policymakers, how much are our government investing in young people? Many times, yes, we know there are a lot of projects. In fact, you hear, for instance, we have projects, the Rice projects, the Giraffe projects, many projects.
That's right.
You understand? And we have a lot of organizations that are as well supporting young people. But how is this strategically done to invest in young people? For instance, you have a project that is worth, let's say, $10,000, so to say, and out of the $10,000, $7,000 is taking for operation. Vehicles are bought, you understand, or the logistics are bought, and the $3,000 that remains are the ones that are supposed to run into programs. How many young people do you have? How many of those people are able to access, but also these grants that are made available? For instance, you say this project is available for young people, but you need to go to the website, and then you need to download the form, and then you need to fill the form and apply for this project, or you must have a registered organization or a registered business in order for you to be able to access this program, or you must finance 15% of this project in order for you to be able to have access to this project. How many young people are educated that will be able to access that platform and get the forms and fill them? How many of these young people, a project of 1 million and 15% of 1 million is around 150,000. How many young people can put together 150,000 to contribute to the project and fund 15% of it? Not a lot of them.
Not a lot.
You understand? So that's the problem. People need to start to see that if we have to invest in young people, we must deliberately do it. We must ensure we give it to them without having to put a lot of stringent conditions on how they can access these platforms.
That's
and
right.
I think the biggest problem and the biggest challenge young people are faced with, and the biggest problem that is overlooked by duty bearers, is the investment in young people.
That's right. The conversation is getting very interesting, but at this point we'll take a short break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Right.
Good morning, boss. Morning, Mr. Yafa. Here is your usual hot coffee.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
You look so happy today.
Yes, we have clicked a $50 million deal.
Wow!
You know, this is something that I've been working on for some time now.
Congrats.
I'm so happy. The second thing is, I was about to send you guys an email. Gambia is now shifting from 7 digits to 9 digits, and this is a national requirement.
Wow.
And for QCell users, you need to add A3 to your existing number. For instance, if your number is 3731512, you add A3 3731512, and the rollout is from the 4th of September to the 30th of November. Please make sure you do what is needed. Okay?
Thank you, sir. You've made my day.
Okay, Siapa, thank you. That's right. Make sure you update your phone book to enjoy using the QCell services. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
All right.
In today's world, speed matters, but slow internet can hold you back. Now, the future of connectivity has arrived in the Gambia. QCell's Q-Fiber, ultra-fast, ultra-reliable internet designed for the way you live. Stream your favorite shows without buffering. Power your business with seamless video calls. Study, work, and play online like never before. From homes to businesses, QCell Fiber is connecting the Gambia to the future. QCell's Q-Fiber. Get connected today. Call 145 or 300-3779. QCell. We innovate, others follow.
Welcome back. You're watching the Youth Dialogue, and I'm Jacqueline Coley. With me in the studio, I have the clerk of the National Youth Parliament, Mr. Abdoulaye Oba. And we've been discussing at length everything and anything that involves the youth. And of course, the upcoming sittings of the National Youth Parliament that is going to take place on the 5th of September, right?
From the 3rd.
From the 3rd of September. And it's basically lined up with many activities. And of course, if you're a youth and you're watching, please do ensure to attend the national,
youth sittings.
The national youth sitting, the assembly that they're having that is going to involve the youths at large. Be there to have your voice heard as well. So tell us about the sittings. How do you ensure that the issues discussed reflect on the ordinary Gambian youth?
Yeah. So one challenge that we've heard over the years, and we've wanted to address that now, and we've begun to identify how we address that, because it does not make sense to every year have a sitting and have resolutions and then they're lying there. What we usually do is when we have our resolutions and they're validated, we share them with all duty bearers. Okay. We go to the ministries that are concerned, and then we share a copy with them. We share copies with our development partners. We also share copies with all the institutions that matters. But usually the follow-up mechanisms as to whether these resolutions are implemented, the measurement that we can hold in our hands and say, well, this was our resolution and it is implemented, has been a serious challenge. And this year we're looking forward to moving away from that, because then that becomes the problem that we are fighting against. Because the Gambia has the most beautiful of plans, the most beautiful of policies.
Right.
You understand? The challenge usually that we are faced with is now the implementation of those plans, the implementation implications of those policies. You understand? So as a youth constituents, as young people of the Gambia, we do not want to be like that. We do not want to be piling documents together and not following up or making efforts to ensure that they're implemented. So we hired a consultant, and the essence of that consultant was for him to be able to measure as to how much impact are the resolutions that we're having, how much impact are they having. So he was studying the 2024 and the 2025 resolutions and what impact they have. For instance, in 2022, the National Youth Parliament resolved that we want to ensure TVET education is decentralized. We know that now the Ministry of the Ministry of Higher Education have a TVET center in each region. So we could brag and say, well, it was our resolution, and that was why now we have a TVET center in each region. You understand? But how much can we attribute that to ourselves? So what we're doing now is to ensure, once we have the resolutions, we ensure we do not just share these resolutions with the duty bearers, but to continually follow up to ensure that these resolutions are implemented. That is why the National Youth Manifesto and the National Youth Declaration that we are going to have this year, we ensure we say it with each political party, but also each presidential aspirant. And then we will not just stop at that. We ensure the manifesto is updated and uploaded on a website. Now, what we're going to do on this website is to track the progress of how much of the manifesto that we've had, the people that are running for elections are responding to. What are some of the things that are in the manifesto that we're seeing in manifestos of political parties? So also, but when a person becomes elected, because the manifesto will not just talk about issues surrounding politics, it talks about a lot more other issues that are young people's priorities. It could be affecting ministries, it could be institution, it could be corporations. So whichever corporation, institution or government ministry that is concerned, we will continually ensure that we follow up to see what impact are the resolutions having, but also what efforts have been made to be able to effect change surrounding the resolutions that we are making.
Right. Since the establishment of the National Youth Parliament, you've made, like you said, so many resolutions.
Right.
Have they been followed up? But tell us the impact that the National Youth Parliament can proudly say, this is what we have achieved and this is the impact we have been able to make in our society.
Right. So a lot of things to talk about, a lot of impacts. For me, I mean, personally, I think the amount of growth that the National Youth Parliament has given to young people of the Gambia is immense. For instance, when it comes to leadership, if I want to count to you the number of people that passed through the National Youth Parliament and are today in very huge positions, you'll be like, okay, how that is possible? You understand? For instance, the Youth Presidential Advisor was part of the National Youth Parliament. And we have about 2-3 National Assembly members that were members of the National Youth Parliament.
Awesome.
Very recently, was it yesterday, or people were celebrating Satang Nabani, for instance. She was member of the National Youth Parliament. So a host of other many young people that were members of the National Youth Parliament are now doing amazingly well. And that is the essence. For us, we want to be a ground where you're able to mold and train young people to become better leaders, so that by the time we have a lot of people leaving the National Youth Parliament and feeding into our different leadership sectors, we have an ecosystem of leaders that have got the training, got the requirement, but also got the experience to be able to effect the most necessary changes. But also, when it comes to other impacts, for instance, when people sit in vehicles today, they wear a seatbelt. Or when you ride a motorbike, you need to have a helmet. This was an advocacy that was led by the National Youth Parliament, and it became law in the Gambia. You know, and many other things that we've been advocating towards. In 2024, we established what we call the National Youth Leadership Academy. The essence of the National Youth Leadership Academy was to train young people, young leaders, and help them become better and more responsible leaders, but also to ensure that we train them to be able to contest election and win election. We graduated a cohort of 35 young people from different political parties, and the essence is to see that these people are now no longer told you do not get the requirement, because us young people have continually asked, we need to be represented, we need to be given spaces, we need to participate. But also, the spaces are not just going to be given to us willy-nilly like that. We must have the capacity to be able to assume those spaces.
That's right.
We must have what it takes to be able to take those spaces. So therefore, we organize this capacity building to ensure that young people are resourced and capacitized to be able to take up those responsibilities. So these and many other things are the things that we're involved in.
So back to elections.
Right.
It is fast approaching.
Right.
And you cannot have all the youths in different backgrounds to join you at the Karabaja or a conference center
Right.
when your sit-ins come.
Right.
Do you have plans to like have a caravan to go into all the hooks and corners of this country
Right.
to sensitize about the upcoming elections? Not only the presidential elections,
Right.
they are very important,
Right.
but you have councillorship,
Right.
mayor,
Right.
and parliamentary elections
Right.
that are coming up in 2027.
Right.
How important is it to have these caravans, and are you planning on having them?
Right. I think one thing you've pointed out, like, it's not just the presidential election. In fact, the most important elections in the Gambia are the ones that are neglected.
Exactly.
That is the local government elections. The local government officials are the ones that are closest to the people than the central government.
That's right.
Before you leave my village and go all the way to Banjul to meet a minister or to go to State House, you first meet my councillor. You understand? These are the people that are closer to me.
Yeah.
And then from the councillor, you now meet the chairperson, for instance, at the area councils. So people in the Gambia most often don't respect these elections, but these are the most important elections and the most fundamental elections. And for us, we pride on that really. And that is why sometimes last year, we had projects that we had in three different area councils. We had one in KMC, one in West Coast, and one in LRR. The essence for those programs was to bring the councils closer to the people so that people begin to appreciate the local councils as the most important government apparatus that are available to them. And people must begin to recognize that, so that they put in place the people that are going to serve their interests, that are going to serve their purpose, that are going to serve the betterment of the people of those constituencies.
That's right.
And that is something that is really important for us. With regards having engagements in the constituencies after the elections, it is part of our plans to ensure whatever outcomes come from the sit-ins, every young person in the Gambia, but not just young people, every person within the constituencies, within the communities, is well aware of the outcomes, but also is well aware to contribute to the efforts that we will be having during the sit-ins, because we want to ensure, like I said earlier, we will share these documents with each political party and with each presidential aspirant.
That's right.
But also we want to make sure we make it a possibility for this document to reach the furthest village in the Gambia. And that will be done by us reaching out with all the young people in the Gambia, but also with all the people that are concerned. And that is part of the plans, and we want to engage in that. But equally, one thing we are not planning to do is to have a document that nobody will reference after 2 weeks, after 3 weeks, after 1 month.
Okay.
We want to have a document that every person will reference. The declaration will have young people committing to ensure that they participate in the election peacefully. Young people will have a commitment to say they will not peddle misinformation and disinformation. Young people will commit to say they will not be peddlers of hate speech. Young people will commit to say they will not lead or instigate violence as the elections approach. But these messages are not just concerning young people, they also concern my grandmother in the provinces. So
That's
therefore
right.
we ensure every young person is going to hear this. And that is what we want to ensure, that our documents do not look like other documents. They get to be documents that are going to be heard and referenced subsequently.
Yeah. So this year you have a team which is amplifying youth voices for democratic governance, accountability, and sustainable development.
Right.
Why this particular team?
So, like I said, young people are a serious constituency in the Gambia.
Right.
Their voices need to be amplified. And if their voices are heard, then we have better governance. If young people participate fully, then we have better governance. If young people's voices are listened to, then we have better structures that will now be able to address the problems we are faced with as a constituency. But also, how do we ensure this leads to accountability? We do not just have to call out leaders when they're campaigning and stuff like that. It is important now, when they assume responsibility, we remind them of the commitments and the responsibilities that they have. If they do not do it right, we hold them accountable by the means that are available to us. and those means will definitely always take. So that is the reason we have the team to amplify the voices for better governance, but also to be able to hold accountable our duty bearers.
I'm very particular about the manifesto you're talking about,
right.
And of course the resolutions that you're going to be given to the political parties to say, have this number of youths in parliament or
right.
in cabinet.
Right.
I'm very particular about that because I think that should be in our law,
right.
to say, have this particular percentage of women being represented in parliament.
Right.
And in cabinet,
right.
And of course youth being represented in parliament and in government as well.
Right.
Do you think this should also be a law, not just you as the youth parliament coming up with these resolutions to give to the political parties to say, we want this to happen, because they might not even take you seriously.
Right.
But this should be law, don't you think?
It should be law. I mean, for the longest time, people have advocated for quota systems in the Gambia, and we've seen talking about the affirmative action for women to ensure that women quota systems are made possible in our laws. And we have organizations that are working around that. We have a lot of people that are committed to seeing that there are this quota system and there are these affirmative actions taken by government. More advanced economies have, and more advanced governance and democracies have had this in their laws. And it is the longest time that the Gambia need to have this as laws.
Absolutely.
And for manifestos like youth manifestos like the one we're going to have, the Gambia is having it for the first time. But many African countries have always had manifestos. I've seen countries that are now having their fifth manifestos, their fifth national youth manifestos. The Gambia is going to have theirs for the first time.
For the first time.
So these are important things that need to be looked at, and they need to be in parliament. We have a parliament that has only 5 women. We have a cabinet that has only 3 women. So therefore it is important, but also young people, even though, the assembly now has a lot of young people.
Yeah, it does.
Young big people, let me call it that, because the definition of young people is that they must be 13 and below.
Yeah.
Even though we have young people that are, we have people that are little above 35, still we call them young people. In the Gambia, you can be my father and you're called a youth representative.
Yeah.
So we have a much more younger parliament now than we've ever had before, and that is good that we recognize, but we still need more young people serving in more strategic positions, whether in parliament, whether in cabinet, whether in our ministries, whether in government institutions, whether in other institutions, but we need to have a lot more young people serving in more strategic positions.
That's right. So I know all of these things you mentioned, the manifesto, the resolutions, what make this year's sit-ins different.
Right.
But what else makes it different?
What else makes this year's sit-ins different is that it comes in an election year.
Absolutely.
And that in no small measures is important, because the political scene or the political environment in the Gambia this year is very volatile. And whatever we can do as young people can determine the fate of what the elections is going to be like. So that is why for us, it's a serious business, because more often than not, it is the young people on top of the gilly-gillies and running around with the campaigns are the people that are the victims, but also are the perpetuators of most times violence. Even though more often than not, these things are initiated by political parties themselves, and eventually young people becomes the bearers of the burden, it's important as a young people or as a community to sit together and discuss this very seriously. And that is why the sitting this year is different. That is why we heavily are investing in talking about election and elections related issues. That is why we heavily calling on all young people to show up on the 5th of September at the General Assembly, where we are going to discuss what our efforts are supposed to be as young people, what our commitments will be as young people, so that when we say we as young people of the Gambia commit that we will ensure that the elections are free from violence, we hold on to that dear, because eventually if anything happens, we are the very victims of those problems.
That's right. So the General Assembly, is it open? Can any youth attend? And if it's open, will everyone have the opportunity? I know if 500 people attend,
right.
not all 500 will be given the opportunity to speak,
yeah.
but at least the majority of them should be given the opportunity to like let their voices out about whatever challenge that they are facing. Is it going to be open?
Right. So if the sitting itself is completely open.
Okay.
So every young person is invited to come. Every other person is invited to come. Even though the discussions are going to be done by the National Youth Parliamentarians, for instance, on the 4th, and they are on when sittings proper are happening. But for the General Assembly, every young person that makes it to the OIC has the potentials of having their voices heard. Now, just like you put it, usually it's a challenge because we have a time frame.
Yeah.
You start, for instance, by 9 or 10, and then you end by 4 or by 5, depending on whatever time we are able to end. But every person is welcome to attend, and their voices are going to be heard. Whoever the time can accommodate to be heard from will definitely be heard from.
We have 3 minutes to go. Elections are approaching. What advice would you have for the youths?
Let us conduct ourselves responsibly. This is our country. If we set it on fire, we definitely do not have somewhere else to lay our heads.
Exactly.
So we must jealously guard the sanity and the peace of this country.
It was a great pleasure having you in the studio, Mr. Abdoulaye Oba, and we'll have you subsequently in other episodes to come, because we have a lot to discuss, and
right.
the National Youth Parliament, of course, is there for the youth, so right. you have a lot to tell us as well.
Absolutely.
After the sit-ins, what did you come up with? What are the resolutions, and what are the young people saying? We'll definitely have you here, let's say next week after the whole sit-ins as well.
Right.
Thank you very much, viewers, for watching. I know and I hope that you've learned, and if you're at home sitting and not having two minds of joining politics, or not even joining politics, making your voice be heard, please be at the Sarada Keraba Jawara Conference Center from the 3rd to the 5th
right. of
September. Thank you very much for watching, viewers. Until I come your way next week, I am Jacqueline Colley. Have a great week. Bye-bye.